if we are not fully ourselves, truly living in the present moment, we miss everything. What's that speak to? If we are not living in the present moment, we miss everything. It's kind of like the kid that says, you know, I like wrestling, but I'm not going to put too much work into it because I'm not going to do it off in college. Or this isn't that important to me. You know, I'll give it a good shot, but I'm not going to really dive in head first and commit myself. You know people like that? Yeah. Where you're at is where it's at. Where you are at the moment is where it's at. Today, right now, where we're at is practice. So you give it your best shot at practice. You understand? You do your best. Today's Martin Luther King Day. I strongly encourage you to go on the internet, Google Martin Luther King Jr. speeches, and listen or read a couple of them, because they're really, really valuable. They're valuable from a perspective, of a human perspective, a civil rights perspective, of course. But they're also valuable from an athlete's and a coach's perspective, because he speaks a lot about what I just said. Taking care of things in the moment, living in the here and now, giving it your best shot, doing your best. He talks a lot about that. He doesn't just talk about equality. He talks about how people work. I was listening to a couple of his speeches last night, and I think it's really important that on a day like today, as teachers and as students, we don't just say, oh man, it's great to have a day off. We take a moment of our time to look why we have this day off. Why do we celebrate this day? And you know, yeah, we had the assembly and all this and that. But take it upon yourself to look and hear what Martin Luther King Jr. had to say. Because it's really important. And the things that he was saying in the 60s, it's ironic that we're still talking about the same things today, in 2013, that he was talking about in the 60s. Two speeches I listened to. He gave a speech called what is known as the street sweeper speech. And he gave this speech he referenced this street sweeper portion in a couple speeches, like most orators or sermons go. They reference things over and over again. It becomes part of their vernacular. He referenced this in a speech he gave to a high school in Ohio, and then he also referenced this to a junior high in Philadelphia. And the name of the speech in Philadelphia was, "What is your life's blueprint?" You just think about that statement. What is your life's blueprint? And the great thing about this is we can easily tie this into wrestling. And we can tie this into our season. We can tie this into individually where we're going. What he has to say here. And I'm going to read a little bit to you. He says, "And when you discover what you will be in your life, set it out to do it as if God Almighty called you at this particular moment in history to do it. Don't just set out to do a good job. Set out to do such a good job that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't do it any better." And here's where it gets good. And here's my favorite part of this speech. "If it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Leontine Price sings before the Metropolitan Opera. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts forces of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. If you can't be a pine at the top of the hill, be a shrub in the valley. But be the best little shrub on the side of the hill. Do you understand what he's saying? Be the best you can be. If your lot calls you to be a wrestler, which it does today, and for the next 4 weeks, how do you go about it? Be the best wrestler you can be. Do it to the best of your ability. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be a sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or fail. Be the best, whatever you are. This is a great speech. And it speaks to sport. And it speaks to life, more importantly. It speaks about what we want to do. When you come in here every day, you live in the moment. And you take care of what you have to do right now. And what you have to do right now is what? Work hard to be the best that you can be. That best that you can be may be the third string guy. That doesn't matter. That best that you can be may be the baby hunt for a state title. What matters is the way you do it. How you go about your business. That's what matters for us. How you go about your business. Every day. Not just today.